Welcome into a new BuffStampede Radio. Adam Munsterteiger, the publisher of BuffStampede.com. Glad to be joined in person by our football analyst, William Gardner, at one of our favorite spots, if not our favorite spot, the Hungry Toad in Boulder. 2543 Broadway. Hanson, Rada, and Johnny Rudder hooked us up today, and we got some good food before we hit record here.
We've spent too much time eating. We don't have enough time to talk.
No, we'll try to get in some topics here, but if you have yet to be to the Hungry Toad in Boulder, I definitely recommend it. It's a spot for European footy, American football, European footy.
Or as I like to call it, European kickball.
Or wings. You got a burger today, mac and cheese.
Yeah, I had an outstanding.
French onion soup is amazing here.
I had an outstanding double cheeseburger. So
we're working today, so no beers, but there is a lot on tap back there.
I almost got one.
Yeah.
Should have got one for now then.
So let's start with the bad news first. Damione Lewis going back to Miami, his alma mater, to coach their defensive tackles. And I wouldn't say this is a surprising move, but given how well I respected what Damione Lewis did in Boulder last year, it's a guy you wish would stay in the program.
Yeah, and I think the fire he brings to the, if anybody's seen some of the R-rated motivational speeches on the sidelines, it's a loss just from that perspective, but he's also an excellent defensive line coach. But, I guess it opens the way for Warren Sapp to become the D-line coach, and we'll see if they hire.
It'd be surprising if that's not the case, right?
Yeah.
Now, do you kind of do what they did on the O-line, and we'll talk about this later, but having three guys that are going to be coaching up front, two of those guys in a co-role, do you do that with the D-line as well?
Well, I guess it depends on who's available out there and how they fit into the role. I think we'll get to the offensive line in a minute, but I think you got to find a guy who has both the credibility and also the willingness to be, part of a team of three, and doesn't need to be the head guy or whatever, because again, talking about like a Andre Giroud who interviewed for the actual job, but then was willing to be in a lesser role. So you got to find the guy that fits right and also helps develop your players. So I don't know. It feels in my gut like three guys is the right way to do it because it worked so well last year. But we'll see.
When you say three guys, you're talking about the edge group as well, which already we know George Hilo is going to take on that responsibility.
Right, and I think those those two groups, the edge guys and the inside guys, all work together and practice together, and it just worked fantastically last year. And I think that they had those two groups had great chemistry in the games because they practiced all the time and worked out together as well. So having three guys work all four or five of those spots maybe really worked out well last year, and so we'll see. I'm curious to know if he's actually looking at somebody or got somebody in mind to come in and again, that sort of situation is a great way for a guy to break into coaching, like Marshall Faulk or Warren Sapp, who really knows what he's doing. And I'm trying to rack my brain to think of defensive tackles or defensive linemen that have been around Coach Prime. I can't really come up with anybody.
Like from his playing days or when?
Playing days or recently or whatever. Because
he's got a pretty good Rolodex.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah. I'm just thinking it's like, I guess Andre Giroud came as sort of a surprise to me, but not that big of a surprise. But I imagine he's got somebody out there, and they've got to be somebody that wants to go into coaching. So we'll see.
Yeah. It is part of when you're having success as a program, though, as a fan base, you can't freak out about this stuff.
Yeah.
It's Coach Prime has showed us in 2 years that he can replace these roles pretty well.
Yeah. Well, and like you mentioned before we were talking, Vincent Dancy is from the South and has never been out of the South, and Damione Lewis is from the South and going back home to Miami where he played. So, these assistant coaches in college are itinerant by nature. They don't stay in places for a long time. They're always looking to move up the ladder or move back to something that they're familiar with.
We're talking like I just can't relate to that as somebody that's had other job opportunities throughout my time covering the Buffs. Like, I'm a very loyal guy, and that in no way am I putting that on Damione Lewis. Like you said, that is what the coaching industry is, and for him, I mean, that's probably on some level a dream opportunity, right?
Yeah, and I think everybody's got their own thing that they're chasing after. Not everybody's chasing after to be a head coach or whatever, but maybe he wants to just go home and be back where his roots are. And the days of a Charlie McBride staying at Nebraska for 25 years are over. I don't think
Brian Cabral at Colorado.
Brian
too.
Cabral, yeah. That's just not where things are anymore. But I think it'll stabilize a little bit under Coach Prime. When he gets an extension and he's here for a few years or whatever, but it's not a huge surprise to me. It's not like Damione Lewis threw up his hand and said, "Well, this sucks. I'm getting out of here." He made a move to basically a lateral move as far as the level of football, but back to a place where he's got roots. So
yeah.
Today's episode is brought to us by Macaulay Capital Fractional CFO Services. Is your business looking for financial guidance and support, but not yet big enough to hire a full-time CFO? Well, we have a solution for you. Hiring a fractional CFO who can work with your business on a part-time basis. You get the benefit of having a seasoned financial expert on your team without the commitment or expense of a full-time hire. And here's the best part. It's likely that a partnership with Macaulay Capital will be a win-win situation, meaning that your business will make more money from the guidance of a fractional CFO than the total cost of partnering with us. For more information or to set up a meeting, please visit MacaulayCapital.com. That's MCCAULEY Capital.com.
Well, good news. Let's transition here. Robert Livingston got a nice little pay bump.
Yeah.
He's set to make $1.55 million per year over the next 2 years. According to USA Today, only 26 assistant coaches nationally made at least $1.5 million during the 2024 season. So you saw the CU Board of Regents unanimously accept this contract offer. And this is a sign, a good sign for the support that Coach Prime is trying to really develop with this program.
Yeah, and I think it's also a sign that Coach Prime understands that he's only going to go as far as his assistant coaches take him. And you take a Robert Livingston, he's as responsible for 9 wins last year as anybody else involved in the program outside that doesn't have the name Sanders or Hunter. And so re-signing him, I think re-signing him before we actually hear about Coach Prime signing his extension is part of the plan, but we'll see. But I think it demonstrates the priorities by Coach Prime. I think it demonstrates that the administration at CU has the priorities of being great in football, and probably keeping Livingston here was the key to hopefully doing better this year than last year.
And Hilo too, a guy that Livingston really had good chemistry with, guys that they could bounce ideas with, even in game. You've got that voice in the box, you've got the eyes on the field, and it wasn't a defense that broke any type of records, but the jump that group made. And it was even beyond that. It was just the eyeball test. You didn't have 12 men on the field all the time.
Well, there were several games as the year went on, not early in the season, not early, but later in the season, there were times, and I'm trying to remember when we got to halftime when we were down. I'm trying to remember which game it was. I think we were down 21-17 or something like that. And I was like, "We've won. We're done. We're going to outscore them in the second half, and we'll win this thing easily. It's done." And you just had that feeling, and it only never worked out, a couple of times. But that we're a second half team, and our defense was going to be there and shut them down. And so having that, and I expect even bigger things this year with some continuity there, and some guys coming back, and some other talent coming in. So I think it was the key off-season thing that had to happen first.
I feel pretty confident the D-line is going to be really good this year.
Yeah.
Maybe one of the best in the Big 12. Linebacker, intriguing pieces. Don't quite know what to make of that group quite yet.
But it's the same thing as it was last year, which we were in the same spot.
We didn't know.
Yeah. We didn't know that.
But you can't expect Nakai Hill-Green to show up on campus every year, can you?
Can you? I don't know. If you've got a dominant defensive line, then an average linebacker can look a lot better. And so they don't have to fight off blocks and what have you. And I think that gives a real advantage to a group of linebackers. But we'll see in spring what some of these guys do and who steps to the front. we didn't really have Nakai Hill Green in the first game.
Right.
He didn't start that game until, and then he came out of nowhere. So who knows? You never know.
Yeah. Cornerback's going to be elite.
Yeah.
I would say the best in the Big 12 right now. Safety, a little bit more of a question mark as well, but he does have a group that, as he likes to say, he's a guy that can tailor a defense to the strengths of that group, and that really gets guys to buy in. So I think that's big news for the Buffaloes. The other big news is Marshall Faulk.
Who's that guy?
I don't know, maybe the greatest running back ever. I mean, Barry Sanders is up there, Walter Payton, Emmett Smith.
Eric Dickerson and Walter Payton would be my two.
Okay. Yeah. But he's in the top 10.
Oh,
for
yeah.
Sure.
Oh, for sure. Top 5, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess probably just because I'm older, I like Dick. Walter Payton did a lot of his without good offensive lines.
Sweetness.
Yeah.
He was the man.
He was so smooth. And then
he was the first person that I was a little tyke.
Yeah.
First football player I ever fell in love with.
And then,
Walter Payton.
And then Eric Dickerson, his running style, was just beautiful because he was straight upright and just striding. But Marshall Faulk is really one of the all-time greats, and I think maybe the best pass-catching running back ever.
And Saquon Barkley has a chance to enter that discussion.
Yeah.
And who did he reach out to?
Right, reached out to Marshall Faulk to get his advice on playing in the snow and one of their games, and so we were speculating beforehand that what gets guys into coaching when they're Hall of Famers like that, and I think guys reach out to them, and you work with a guy like Saquon Barkley, and you think, hey, I like this is fun, these guys listen to me.
Yeah. So he's going to work with Tommy Robinson.
And people don't understand who Tommy Robinson is, and this guy's been coaching running backs since 2000. I mean, he's been everywhere. He's Southern Cal, I think, Texas, Arizona Cardinals, USC, Texas, LSU, Texas A&M. I mean, Tommy Robinson as your assistant running backs coach is nuts.
Well, I think it's a good mix, right?
Yeah,
of somebody that has put in the grunt work, and somebody that is taking his first college job and has this passion and all this knowledge. And it's one of those things that, like, we have chemistry, obviously, working on this podcast. It's hard to know until you really work for a while together.
Yeah.
But if they have that chemistry, resume-wise, that's a perfect match.
Right. And I suspect that Coach Prime, puts them together and has them talk to each other and sees how guys, because sometimes you just sit down with somebody, you can't talk with them, and so probably spend some time together before it happens was something that they looked at to make sure that chemistry was going to be there.
Anything else there? It's a running backs group that they decided not to add talent to, but we're excited about DJ Augustov's potential, Michael Welch's potential. Dallin Hayden did not have the first year in Boulder that we were hoping for. You made the case many times on our podcast in the past. You don't give up on a guy until his eligibility is done. Dallin Hayden made plays at Ohio State. So please prove, I don't know, do you want to join yourself in this? But I would say prove us wrong.
Yeah, I think, I'm looking at it as he would be the third running back right now on the team. I mean, because I personally think Augustov's a 1,000-yard back, and I think that a guy like Marshall Faulk teaching him that stuff is going to make a huge difference. And I think the other thing that jumps out to me is you don't bring in a Marshall Faulk to hand off 7 times, which I think this illustrates a new commitment to the run game. And it's got to be done, obviously, in conjunction with Shermer. I mean, it's not like, hey, here's your running backs coach. He's got to be part of that whole conversation. And so I think when you bring in an Andre Giroud, who's maybe the most dominant center guard that I can remember in the NFL, and a Marshall Faulk at running back, that to me says you're going to run the ball, But I think that, to me, Augustov is a 1,000-yard back if they give him enough carries, and I think that Welch is a very intriguing back, and I don't know if he's got the breakaway speed that Augustov has, but he's a guy to get you 4 and 5 yards every time you give him the ball. And then Hayden has to show that he can, make a guy miss or get that little extra, And then I think the guy that people are not thinking about, who's the speedster, is Hood.
Yeah.
Who can
him.
really run.
And I just did.
Yeah,
thanks for pointing him out.
Yeah, and preseason last year, I remember he was the one that lit it up down at that practice down in Denver.
He's similar with Isaiah Augustov, I think, that he does at times run with high pad level, but like he still moves forward when he gets hit. Like he's still going to get that extra couple yards.
Yeah, and he's got a little more shiftiness than the others. Augustov to me is one of those slasher types, and he sees the hole quick and gets through it, and then he can frankly outrun the defense. But I think those four guys are exciting to see coming back, and then I think we've got some other guys who are not labeled as running backs who can do some things out of the backfield that give us some flexibility.
I wonder if there was any part of this discussion in the coach's office in terms of not bringing in a running back. Clearly, they like those guys, but they didn't want to run any of them off. There's something there?
And I think there obviously had been a conversation with each one of those guys to make sure they were going to stick around, and that the coaches wanted them and they wanted to be part of it. But it certainly appears to be a mutual thing. I think in today's world, if both sides aren't on board, somebody's leaving.
Yeah. You mentioned Andre Giroud coming on staff, and Gunnar White being the O-line coach there. George Hageman expected to be part of that offensive line group as well. Again, this comes back to chemistry for me.
You like my old lady glasses?
I love them, yeah. You got to read. You got to be able to see.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
Vanity is overrated. So.
Yeah. Well, they're my major league glasses. Remember Charlie Sheen? And he, And he got
Wild
those,
Thing.
Wild Thing, and then all of a
sudden
you
don't have enough hair for that, though.
Yeah, that's all right, though. Yeah. And plus, I can't throw a ball across the street, so that's part of it too.
But it comes down to chemistry, right? Otherwise, you get into a too many cooks in the kitchen scenario.
Yeah. Well, and I think, and I'm sure they probably had conversations before this was done, but it really comes down to how you're going to break things up too, because how you going to coach and practice? Because one way to do it that would make a lot of sense to me is break them up by position. If, like say Giroud would work with the centers, and likely White would work with guards, and Hageman would work with tackles. That's one option.
Makes sense. Yeah.
It also gives you more eyes on the players when you're doing reps and stuff, because it's tough when you're an offensive line coach, and I never had an assistant offensive line coach at the levels I was coaching, but
you had a graduate assistant though, didn't you, or not back in those days?
No, well, not the college level I was coaching at.
Okay.
So it's hard and then when you're at the high school level, you got and offensive line coach got the most players of any coach on the team. You got 15 to 17 guys, and 5 guys every single time the play goes, and you can't watch them all. So you try to focus on this guy and that guy, and then you got to do a lot of film work to catch up with things that you don't see. And that's one of the things I keep saying on the board is what you think you see on TV or what you think you see from the stands is not what happened. And I know that sounds crazy, but there's 5 guys in there, and you may think, well, this guy screwed up, but it may be the other guy's assignment.
Yeah.
And so you have to go back through the film and watch that sort of stuff. But with 3 guys instead of 1 or even 2, you can really watch the guys on reps. One coach can go with the scout team and work with those young guys on their technique, because nobody works with them normally. Now you got a guy who can go work with them during scout time and whatever. So there's just really any number of things you can do in that situation, and it really is how they feel comfortable and how they want to get the most out of players. You could have 2 of them might work with the older guys, and 1 of them might work with the younger guys. So you develop guys that are not necessarily in the top 2 at a position or something like that. So I think there's lots of options to it.
You've talked about Andre Giroud, and I've heard a lot about him. He was pre-Adam Munsterteiger covering the Colorado Buffaloes. And yes, I did just talk to reference myself in the third person.
That's all right. We won't mind.
What everybody reveres him. You talk about his aggression. Like what else should folks know about him?
Yeah, and I don't know if it's aggression. He's a nice person, but he just plays mean. But he I don't know. There's just a combination of size and aggressiveness, and he played all 3 positions, guard and both guards and center, and was an All-American and I think 10 or 12 years in the NFL and was just dominant with the Cowboys. And if you watch some of his NFL film, he's just as dominant there as he was in college. And one of the four best linemen, I think, in CU history. Him and Chris Nioli obviously is another guy you think of, and then Stan
who,
Brock.
by the way,
yeah.
is a scout for the Eagles.
Right,
Congratulations.
right.
Him and Jordan Dizon, who I ran into Jordan Dizon. Sorry to put you off track here, but I ran into Jordan Dizon in the press box this past year and had a chat with him. Such a great guy.
Yeah, and
he's a Colorado guy through and through, Hawaii and Colorado through and through.
And Nioli's another guy that would have been a great choice for an offensive line coach, and he's got a lot of experience. I don't know. I'm not sure where he is. Well, he's scouting for the Eagles. That's where he is.
Yeah.
Duh. Hello. But yeah, so those two guys and Joe Garton and Stan Brock would be my top four Colorado.
Really? Okay.
Offensive linemen in history, but Andre Giroud is just he. You know, a lot of guys that are as big and powerful as he is aren't necessarily technicians, but he is. So that's why he's so dominant at even the NFL level, because he puts together everything. You know, so he's a technician. You know, he's more powerful than everybody else, and just massive, just a massive human being. So you know, and I think again, it's like. You know, like somebody was talking about, you were talking about one of the players talking about playing for Warren Sapp. It's like, why wouldn't I listen to that guy? He's been there and he's done it, you know. And Andre Giroud's the same kind of thing. And I don't think there's any offensive lineman that ever is going to be known in the household like a defensive tackle, like a Warren Sapp. But if anybody is, you know, Giroud would be one of those guys.
Gunnar White has received, I don't know what's the right word here, some discussion on the message boards, and I've seen him be a little bit more active than the previous two offensive line coaches on the recruiting trail.
Yeah.
I know the guys in the program really respect him. Coach Prime loves him a lot. Doesn't make for a great podcast to say, let's see how this looks going forward.
Yeah.
But like over the years, I have learned, one of the many things I have learned is that a resume when you get hired in the first press conference, the intro press conference you do, that does not result in a whole lot of anything.
No.
And now resumes do matter, but there just have been so many guys that have come in with fanfare that don't live up to expectations, and vice versa. And maybe this isn't the spot to put it on Gunnar White, but just it goes to my point of like, I'm not going to judge this right now, like from a very firm standpoint.
Well, and I think that, you know, I hear some people talking about like, well, he'll get eaten alive in the locker room, and that's not really how it works, you know. And
if he was, he would have gotten weeded out already. He was with Coach Prime at Jackson State as well.
And you know, so there's different ways to get credibility with players, and one of them is that you were a great player, you know. But like, you know, my favorite guy, Dan Lanning, he wasn't a great player. He played at some pissant college, right? But people still listen to him and does what he says. So you can gain credibility with your players in a lot of different ways. But, you know, I think fans tend to think of like Chris Nioli throwing Neuheisel into a locker, right? I mean, that doesn't happen very often. That's not how it works, okay? Clearly there was a lack of respect there, and that was a thing that developed over time. But they're not going to be getting up in Gunnar White's face and what have you. He was there last year. Now clearly a Phil Lodeholt or an Andre Giroud gets a different kind of credibility, right? And so I think it's masterful to bring in somebody like Giroud who can help with that side of it. But I don't think Gunnar White was ever going to be just like pushed around by the players. That's not going to happen. You know,
no one's ever pushing George Hageman around as much as they might try.
Not unless they got a truck or something. Yeah. So, are you saying I'm fat? But I think it you know, again, until we see it on in practice and on the field, we don't know how this trio is going to work. But I think it's a great idea, and I assume that the three guys had to talk amongst themselves and have, you know, connection with each other before. You know, I don't think they just brought in Andre Giroud without meeting those two guys and making sure that they all, you know, didn't hate each other's guts right off the bat. But what they do need to do is figure out how they're going to do this and have a plan, just like Dancy and Sapp and Lewis had last year with the defensive line.
Yeah. One of the new things covering the Colorado Buffaloes is their presence at the Super Bowl. and Coach Prime was out there. Even Julian Lewis was out there, showcasing some of his new NIL deals. You had Shador out there. Travis hosted a podcast. Of course, he disappeared after that.
Yeah.
God bless him. On some level, I kind of admire that. Like you get what you need to get done, and then you get in your onesie and do whatever you want. Who else was out there? Warren Sapp was out there as well.
Yeah, everybody was out there. It's like I saw them when they're walking around that venue where they had every different booths facing all different directions. Like everybody. I'm surprised I didn't have a show. But did you say Juju?
Juju was out
Lewis
there.
was there.
Yeah.
Meeting with some of those big time guys and whatever. Sapp was out there, and at one point somebody was they had I saw Sapp get interviewed, and then Coach Prime came after him, and Sapp was looking for a new title.
Yeah, well, we'll see what that title is in a few weeks, right? When they kick off spring ball.
Yeah,
we got to get to all of our pre-spring ball thoughts here. We're going to go position by position on our next couple of shows, starting with the offense and the defense. Before we close out this show, William, did you have any thoughts on the 2025 schedule release here?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. A schedule's a schedule. It's the same teams with the first three. I think a lot of people seem worried about Georgia Tech. I don't know. We'll see what happens with that.
They've been improving.
Yeah.
You're at home.
Yeah, we're at home. I think we trying to remember 2 years ago the first game. Well, we went down to Texas and won down there. So I
TCU,
think we're usually pretty ready in the first game. I think people say last year maybe we weren't ready,
North
but
Dakota State is a good football
they're
team.
a damn good.
That quarterback
Yeah,
was the starting
right.
quarterback
Yeah.
in the East-West Shrine Bowl.
Yeah, and they're a well-coached team, and so they do the same thing year after year. So they're always ready in that first game. So you can't use that as a measuring stick. But I think Georgia Tech and then Delaware ought to be a fairly easy win. I think the first four actually is a pretty good lineup with Delaware, Houston, and Wyoming. We ought to be able to come out of that. They're a pretty good shot at 4-0, quite frankly.
Yeah, that's where the pressure comes in on the first game, right?
Yeah,
Of like,
yeah.
If you get that win, then all of a sudden
you roll
kinda
those four.
Yeah. And then BYU shows up.
Yeah, and then you got BYU, and I don't know. It's like I don't think we were talking before we started here. BYU is not as much better than us than they looked in that bowl game, but I think they were more serious, and I think they were more ready for that game, and we weren't. And the any given Saturday trope is a real thing, and just because you see a blowout one week doesn't mean you won't see the same thing later on down the season. Ohio State with Oregon this year.
Yeah.
Lost 1-1, and you play later on, and it's a different game on a different day. And is BYU as good as they looked in the Alamo Bowl? I don't know. And they got to go through things in the off season just like we do, and we'll see what happens when the season comes. But if ever there was a lesson in the unpredictability of college football, it was the Big 12 last year.
Oh yeah. And that's the thing is you can't. The comparative scores, or even the scores against that same team the year before,
right.
You throw
Mean
that
nothing.
out the window
Right.
a little bit, and then TCU back home against Iowa State. I love the fact there's 2 bye weeks later in the season.
Right, when you're getting a little worn down and you need that break, and guys need a break, and you got one right after Iowa State, which is good, before Utah. And
they need to beat Utah, by the way.
What?
They need to beat Utah, by the way.
Well, yeah. All right.
It's been too many years now.
We beat them this year.
Did they?
Yeah, we blew out Utah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, in Salt Lake City.
Yeah, well, that'd be a nice thing to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't, will Utah and Oklahoma State struggle as much as they did this year? Who knows? We'll see.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Arizona.
We get West Virginia, which I'm told is a beautiful town to go to. I don't know. To wrap up with a tough stretch with Arizona State and Kansas State. I think, but for a play here or there, we beat Kansas State this year. And I think teams are very different by the 12th game of the season than what you expected at the beginning. But you'll know what you have by that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We are way too early to do season predictions.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
But-
let's get through spring ball and see what we got. And that second portal period, we picked up some guys that really made a difference last year after spring ball. And see who leaves and who stays and whatever.
Well, you're up here on official business. You're going over to CU. Tell folks out there what you're doing.
I got to go over to law school and see if I can hire some future lawyers.
Okay.
Yeah, I one of the things I like to do is I have interns every year, and my interns end up being lawyers in our office. So that's a lot of fun to me. Just like Coach Prime, I like working with those youngsters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's your vetting process like for that?
I don't know. Basically, I think my first thing is always like, do we connect? Do they have the personality? Do they have the drive? Do they do the? I can look at the work they give me and tell what kind of work they're doing. But the first thing I always say is I'm looking for people that want to do this as a career when you come back. And the second thing I always say is we do the right thing every single time. And if you can't do that, you can't work for me. And so I like to tell them, and they're young, and I tell them, you're going to make mistakes. We all make mistakes. And the question that determines who you are as a person is how do you deal with those mistakes. And so I tell them, you make a mistake, you got to tell me. You make a mistake with another lawyer, you tell them. You make a mistake as a lawyer, you tell the judge. But you don't try to hide it. So looking for those kinds of things. And I don't know, I just always know when I got them. And it always works out because they end up being new lawyers in our office. So I've already hired one, and she went to undergrad at CSU and is doing law school at Cincinnati. And so I told her, I said, my team kicked your team's butts, both of them this year. And she laughed. And I was like, okay, see, she could work with me because she got a sense of humor.
That's awesome. Well, we are going to go position by position, and we're going to come back to the Hungry Toad. We have a tentative date, right? We're working off William's schedule here.
That's Saturday.
March 1st, 2nd?
First, I think it's March 1st is that Saturday, yeah.
The Saturday, we're going to come back. We'll put some details out on BuffStampede.com and on Twitter. We got to get back here to the Hungry Toad, 2543 Broadway. Again, thanks to Hanson Rada for always welcoming us in here and giving us some awesome food.
Yep, it's a good place.
Well, good luck recruiting your new lawyers. And let's start getting into the nitty gritty and start previewing spring ball. Sound good?
Position by position, baby. I've been pushing for it. He's been saying no. Dad keeps saying no. Go talk to Mom.
Dad says let's do it tomorrow.
All right.
All right. Thanks everybody out there for tuning in.